hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushka on Blitz, and today we're going to be looking at the M60, that very controversial tank that was recently gifted by Wargaming. I'm going to get the editorial stuff out of the way really early on. Wargaming did a gifting with this tank, but they didn't actually set any criteria. They didn't tell anyone about it beforehand, and they just gave the tank to certain individuals based on their own criteria without mentioning it on the forums, in channels, in the game or anything. And it caused an absolute firestorm. In fact, it made me, I actually call this tank Little Nero, because Nero burnt down Rome in 64 AD, and the M60 burnt down the forums of World of Tanks Blitz in December of 2016. And Little Nero is a very apt name because the forums absolutely melted. And there's a lot of people out there who are very salty and very angry still at Wargaming because they didn't get the tank. That's neither here nor there. What I'm here today to do is actually give you an idea on what the tank does, how it performs, how you should be playing it, because it is, according to Wargaming, a reward tank, and they're going to be giving it out again in-game in the future for various different things. And that's important. That's really important, because if you do get this tank, or you get an opportunity to get this tank, you're going to want to know about it, and you're going to want to know what it does. And if you're going to play against it, you're going to need to know what it does. And I saw Ruckus's recent vid. Now, he hasn't been doing a lot of vids lately, but if you haven't watched his vid, you should, because he still plays the house down and he makes a fantastic video. So that's 48 Ton Ruckus. Always go and check out Ruckus's channel. It's well worth a look. And it was the first channel that got me into Blitz videos. In fact, it was the first Blitz video channel I ever looked at. So what about the M60? Well, it's a proper tier 10 medium. It performs absolutely competitively, and it is every bit as good as the M48A1 Patton. In fact, I think it's the best tier 10 American medium in the game right now. And being a tier 10 medium, it brings certain factors to the game. It has very good damage per minute numbers compared to tier 9 mediums and tier 10 heavies in the most part. It doesn't have as good a damage per minute numbers as, say, a Russian Object 140, but I'll run you through those in a second. We're going to have a look at a very interesting tool to do that. It's got lovely gun depression, and it is a great peek-a-boom ridge fighter. It's got great penetration numbers and very good view range, and it looks really unique. Now, I find it quite hilarious that after me copping such a flogging for making an 047 video, that I don't actually, and where all I care about is the performance of the tank, that I actually do take umbrage with a couple of bits on this tank, which is bloody ironic. Now, I shot this video on the NA server, and you can see I'm playing with 280 odd ping. And as such, it was really important that the tank perform, because playing at 280 ping solo at tier 10 is very difficult, and it performed. And you can see also, because I was on an account that had Bushka in the title, I got YOLO'd the hell at. That was Griffin Master there YOLOing at me, and I'm not sure who that was in the M60 prior YOLOing at me as well, but it happened an awful lot. And I ran the tank, I think it was over 20-25 games. I ran it at about 63-64% win rate solo with 2800 average damage. Very fine indeed if you're running a tank at that kind of ping. So I was very happy with the performance of the tank. And I've driven a lot of M48A1, so I know exactly how that tank feels. And this is a slightly better tank for me. And I'm going to break down exactly why in just a second. But you can see here, I'm on the flank with this tank at just a standard Rockfield game. It's a supremacy game, and I've basically decided their medium move is going to come down this flank, and I'll try and hold while the rest of the team holds onto these two caps and do my level best. And just using standard game mechanics and the skills of the M60, its intangibles, we're able to do a really good job of that. And we put a lot of damage out there just holding. We nutted the PTA. We're going to kill this M60 before we die. Yeah, so all round pretty solid. And we'd already killed an ST1, so we did, I don't know, 3 or 4k on this game. We're going to have a look at this little thing of sock robbers now. So I don't want to take too long. I've lined up a fantastic little gig here. This is Dave, aka Sock Robbers, Blitzstars website. And he's got this tank-compare.blitzstars.com. You can see the URL at the top of the page there. And it allows you to basically pump in whatever tank you want and compare it against other tanks. And I've taken the liberty of putting 3 tier 10 mediums up here to give you an idea on how they perform one to the other. And I'm going to be as quick, and I'm just going to do some highlights here. You can delve into it yourself if you want. It's the Object 140, the M48A1, and the M60. Obviously those two, because they are very, very similar in terms of looks and equipment. They've both got the same guns. But they don't have the same performance. You can see in terms of DPM, the M60 is slightly ahead, but both of them are well behind the Ruskies. And that's there for context, really, because I don't think the Object 140 is in the same class as these. I think it's a better tank. But you can see straight away that the Americans are down the low end of the tier in DPM. It's not such a big deal, though, for those guys, because they do have higher alpha guns, and they do have lots of gun depression. So they can actually be a bit more peek-a-boom and ridge fighter-ish. The key thing here, though, is shell velocity. They have 1478 and the Object has 1535. So Russian bias again. This is the big one, weapon handling. The M60 beats the pants out of the M48A1 in terms of gun handling. And that's just all there is to it. The M60's got a good to great gun handling roll there. It's got 0.317 dispersion and 1.47 seconds of aim time, which is excellent. And I really noticed that running at 280 ping on the NA server, good gun handling was really, really helpful. It's also got an extra degree of gun depression. It's got a proper 10 degrees of gun depression down and 20 degrees of gun elevation up, which is great. And it's got excellent on-the-move firing, which the M48A1 has as well. The Object 140 is the best in Tier 10 at this. And that's why it's got 0.08 as a coefficient for that. The only other thing that's notable here that I really want to carry on about is the soft terrain resistance stats. And you can see them there at the top. 0.7, 0.8, 1.2 for the M60. That's why, even though it has a lower power to weight ratio, it just doesn't make any difference. You can see the Object's got the worst power to weight ratio. And again, that's why I've got it in here for context. But soft stats like this that are hidden are the reason why certain tanks, despite the numbers that you see in your dynamic display on the client, go better. Terrain resistance, like soft, medium, hard ground, they're the coefficients that go into all the other numbers to give you the end result, the actual degrees of traverse that you have happening in game. And the Object 140 has the best, and the M48A1 has the worst out of these three tanks. And that's why it's balanced out that poorer hit point per ton ratio, not hit point, horsepower per ton ratio. So M60 for mine moves just as well as the M48A1. Both of them have excellent view range, which is fantastic, and the M60 gets an extra 50 hit points. Neither of them earn credits, despite the fact that the M60 is a premium tank. Don't be fooled by that. So how do you drive this thing? Well, it's pretty simple. If you've ever driven the M48A1, it's the same. It's a very solid tank in a lot of different respects. It doesn't have the same strength of hull armor that the M48A1 has, the chassis, but that's fine because the M48A1's chassis isn't particularly amazing. It has a strong turret though, which is really important, and it allows you to use the 10 degrees of gun depression to really get the business done. And you can see that we got a shot on that T62A, and he didn't actually get the shot on us. And we can see down onto his lower glacis there. We stuff it up. But what we're going to do here is utilize gun depression and a big fat tank because it is absolutely monstrous. There's something that I didn't mention earlier. This tank has a booty that just will not quit. Like Sir Mix-a-Lot said, I like big butts and I cannot lie. And this one has a pair of buttocks like a, I don't know, long distance figure skater. Long distance speed skater. So you want to be really, really careful because HE will pen your derriere very, very comfortably. But your turret is quite trollish. The M48's turret, since it got buffed and since they removed the huge like weak point on top of it, the machine gun hatch, has really come through, and that's exciting for this tank because this tank has a very, very nice extra degree of gun depression, and that means you can quite comfortably use it to fire over hills and ridges and work very well. It's also, as you saw from the stats on Sockrobber's website, Tank Compare, got excellent on-the-move firing capability, and you can see that in full evidence here versus the E100. Now, I've stopped using the Mac. I'm using only the finest iPad that money can buy at the present, the iPad Pro 2. So it means that the capability of firing on the move actually stands out, because on the Mac you can auto lock something and you don't have to worry about it again. You can just drive around it and press the button. On the iPad, you've really got to aim when you're doing this circle of death stuff. And it's quite mobile too. The soft stats, the terrain resistance stats, and the traverse numbers are absolutely Jim Dandy, and they allow you to get around like a boss and circle of death all kinds of bigger, heavier tanks. And you saw we absolutely pounded that poor old E100, who was silly enough to get stuck in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you can get around tanks because you have 60 degrees of traverse and 51 degrees of traverse on your turret, so 60 degrees on your tracks. You've got great view range running your optics and all these things, remember, are the equipment I'm running is V-Stab, optics, and gun rammer. Now, I'm just going to show you a quick game here. This is utilizing just good, solid medium tactics and the things that the M60 has in spades, i.e. gun depression and a nice big dose of alpha. 350 alpha on a 105mm is great if you're a gun depression tank, because it allows you to peek a boom and get a little bit more bang for your buck. And the gun is just fine. It's every bit as good as the Object 140's gun, and it's got better gun handling. So unless you're on the move, and even then you are just about as good as an Object 140, you really shouldn't have any troubles getting shots in. Your APCR pen is 268, which is good. That's absolutely fine. You won't need to call on Premo too often. For the most part, it'll be just on those tricky shots or on shots that you really want to make sure you pen with, i.e. the front of an Object 268, which I should probably have done there. Or here, anyway. It's a good tank. It's a solid tier 10 medium. Even though it's the only premium tank over tier 8 and the only premium tank in tier 10, it doesn't feel at all like a premium tank. It feels like a proper, ground out, top of the line, tier 10 medium. In fact, it feels like a M48A1 Patton with just a few more little bells and whistles, which should be no bloody surprise because that's exactly what it looks like. And although I don't like the big Cyclops-like spotlight / telescope on the front of the gun mantlet, it doesn't really worry me because it's not something that gets in the way too often. And look, I always like driving the M48A1. Even in the recent Know Your Nasties video that I did for tier 10 mediums, I pointed out that it was probably not the strongest tank at tier 10, but that I really, really like driving it because it feels very cool and the engine sounds are great and it's big as a house. Like, it's bigger than a T110E5, and this thing's got an even bigger pimped out ride at the back. The back deck on this, as I mentioned earlier, is enormous. It's got a butt that will not quit, and that's something you've got to hide, but I don't think it's anything that's really going to affect the performance of the tank. All the good drivers will tell you already that if you see the back of an American tank, you should be loading HE, because that's where you can do the monster damage. And that's all well and good, but for the same thing, have a look at it go. And I've done very well here because what I've done is I've got this IS-7 in water, and that means that he's really screwed because water tends to affect bigger, heavier tanks a lot more than it affects smaller, medium tanks. There is actually a stat for driving in terrain like water. So there you go. That's a little cure-all you should know. That's the M60, guys. In a nutshell, great ridge fighter, accurate gun, solid turret armor since the buff to the M48A1, and it's got the same turret armor as the M48A1. You are going to be loving that. It's got nice alpha, 350 alpha, which can sometimes roll a little bit higher and give you a 400 roll, which is grand, and good mobility. I mean, firepower, armor, and mobility are all ticks. Doesn't feel like a premium to me at all. Would I rather drive this or an FV4202? Well, I'd rather drive this. Would I rather drive this than an STB? Good question. I think I may well drive this instead of an STB, despite the fact I think the STB is sexy as all hell. And now we're just talking about personal preference because I really like the aim time on this. And I think the gun handling is better than the STB. And I'm a big fan of good gun handling coupled with gun depression. So, yeah, there is that. I don't think the turret's as strong as an STB. I think it's easier to get good angles on an STB. But I'd rather drive it than the M48A1, which is a bit sad, but there you go. So that's it, guys. That's the M60. As always, make sure you subscribe to the channel, listen to the podcasts, like the videos, and just do your very, very level best to look after your families and stay safe on the battlefield.